Hi friends, and welcome back. I'm Julie with Sanctuary Gardens. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to prune a fruit tree. This here isn't my apple tree, and this is what I'm going to be using to show you how to thin. It's sunny out, but it's still sprinkling. We've had a very wet spring so far, and so thinning my apple trees has kind of been a little bit difficult. And so this tree is actually probably a little overdue for a thinning, but I'll go over that in just a minute. Now, thinning is different than pruning. A lot of people get those two confused. With pruning, what you do is usually when the tree is dormant, you prune off some of the branches so that you can create a nice canopy for the tree for best production of fruit, and it helps with preventing pests and diseases as well. With thinning though, you're not taking any branches off, you're actually taking off some of the fruit. Why would you want to take off some of the fruit? Well, a lot of times people look and they see a heavily loaded fruit tree and they're like, yay, we're gonna get so much fruit this year. And yes, I know that's very exciting, but there's a lot of benefits to taking out some fruit. One of the benefits is it helps with disease prevention. When fruit is tightly clustered together, there's a lot of spaces for fungus to start growing or for bugs to get in there. And so it helps with that. The second thing is what fruit you do have left will be bigger and better and sweeter. Instead of having a lot of little apples, if I thin this tree, I'm gonna get maybe less, but bigger and more beautiful apples. The other thing is if you have too many apples on a limb, let's say this limb here has 6 apples growing on it, that's a lot of weight on that limb. And so if you let these fully ripen, there's a good chance that you might end up breaking off branches. So what will you need for thinning fruit trees? Very simple. You could just use your fingers and actually like pick fruit off. That came off really easily. But sometimes by doing that, I accidentally pull off a whole branch or some leaves, and I don't want to do that. So I usually use pruning shears. Make sure they're sharp and they're sterile. You can sterilize them with rubbing alcohol right before. And just, I find this a lot easier to just trim one off like that. Some trees do not necessarily need thinning. Apple trees are one of those that is a heavy producer and definitely needs thinning. It will not drop any fruit without help. Some trees like cherry trees or your pear trees even, they tend to actually self-thin a little bit. Once in a while I will thin a little bit of my pear tree, just taking off some that don't look very good. But in general, I don't touch my pear trees. I pretty much only do my apple trees. If you have a small tree, this is a lot easier. You may not even need a ladder. But if you have a large mature tree like me, I'm gonna have to need a ladder for some of those top branches. But today I'm gonna show you with some of these lower branches. The perfect time to thin your fruit tree is when the fruit is about 1 inch in diameter. This is pushing that. 1 inch is about from this knuckle to this knuckle here. And as you can see, it's getting pretty close to that. So this tree is very ready to be thinned. So you want your fruit to be no bigger than 1 inch when you start thinning. So the first step with thinning apples is first look for these big clusters of fruit here. You don't want any clusters like this. You want to thin it out so it's only 1 apple left. So what I'm going to do is I always look for the biggest and healthiest apple of the tree. This one's smaller. Oh, and it just fell right off. This one here looks really weak. Also fell right off. So what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to leave this one right here, and I'm going to take all of these off and just leave that one. This is probably the best fruit of the bunch there. And so that branch there is going to put a lot of energy into creating a really big, beautiful apple. This branch here, I'm going to take off all these clusters and just leave 1 apple per cluster. But as you can see, I have 4 apples on this tiny branch. This branch is not very sturdy. So I'm going to thin it out to, I'd almost leave 1 apple, but at the most 2. And you want your apples spaced about 6 to 8 inches apart, which is probably just about perfect between either these 2 or these 2. So I'm going to take this one off here, and I'm going to take this one off down here. So I'm left with 1 beautiful apple here and 1 there, and they're nicely spaced apart. If you're concerned that this branch can't even handle that weight, then I would take 1 of these off. And I might almost take this one off, because this one's closer to the thicker branch, will have a little bit more support. With this branch here, we have a cluster right here, a cluster right here, and then I have 2 more up that branch. I'm gonna thin this out so there's only 2 apples on this entire branch. One thing that I also pay attention to is what branch will support more fruit than another. This one here is going vertically up versus this one's coming out to the side. This is a much better angle right here for supporting fruit than this vertical angle. So I'm gonna go ahead and just take all the fruit off of this one here, whoops, and just leave that fruit right there. And then I'm just going to take off, let's see, that one there. So I have one fruit right here, and I have one here on that long branch. When I'm thinning, I always check for any disease on the apples. Obviously, some of these just naturally fall off as you barely touch them, but I always check and see if there's any fungus or any bugs starting to get in there, and if I do see that, those are the ones I'm going to thin, and I'm going to leave the healthiest fruit behind. There we go. So we only have 2 left on that branch. You notice here that these 2 branches are crossing, and that's just going to cause abrasions. So I'm actually going to just prune off this piece here. I don't very often take big pieces of limbs, but little limbs like that, little branches I'll take off, just so now those 2 branches aren't rubbing against each other. It takes a long time to thin a big apple tree like one that I have. And so just plan on at least a couple days of thinning, especially for a tree this big, to get this tree fully thinned. So I hope that this is helpful and you'll go out and start thinning your fruit trees. Like I said, this does, it's pretty easy, but it does take a lot of time, so do plan on several days to get your big fruit trees thinned out. Thanks for watching. Make sure to give me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Go out and grow something. God bless.
Somebody likes the apples that I throw on the ground. Is that tasty, Ranger? Not very ripe.